Hello, and welcome to Wired for Change, where we look at the people, technologies, and ideas reshaping our world. I'm your host, Amy Yee. When we think about military cooperation, we often think of ships at sea or planes flying in formation. But today, some of the most consequential cooperation happens in a place that you can't see, across 40 nations, under intense time pressures, with people defending everything from air defense systems to power grids and hospital networks. In exercises like Locked Shields and Cyber Coalition, cyber defenders compress years' worth of attacks into just a few days. Legal teams, communications teams, and strategic leaders all work together, forced to make decisions under the clock, because in cyber, seconds matter. These exercises aren't just about defending networks. They're about trust, interoperability, making decisions under pressure, and preparing for a world in which civilian infrastructure and military operations are increasingly intertwined. Today, I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel Gary McQueen from Canadian Armed Forces Cyber Command, NATO Section Head. Together, we're going to explore how Canada trains overseas and with its allies in Talon and beyond, and what that means for collective defense in the cyber domain. Gary, thanks so much for being with us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Amazing. So, help us understand a little bit about Cyber Command to start with, because I think it was only formed in September 2024 or so it's maybe a year and a half old. So maybe you can explain for our viewers how it came together and what its mission is.
Yes, happy to. So, yes, as you said, mentioned, it's a fairly new command within the Canadian Armed Forces. Part of it is a recognition that cyber is a domain of conflict, just like air, land, sea, and space is. So, with the stand up of Cyber Command, we've recognized that, but also brings together a lot of capabilities that have been their own entities or in the past, um, including things like signals intelligence and electronic warfare, all combined in with cyber defense and cyber offense, and put it under one command to help coordinate and command and control those operations. It also brings more of an operational focus to some of the trades or some of the skills that have traditionally been seen as a support role, IT focused, and more into the cyber operations role. So that's also helped and to centralize that command and control.
Amazing. Maybe you can describe your role within there as well.
Yeah, so I'm the NATO Section Head within the CAF Cyber Command headquarters. What I do is more engage on the strategic level with some of our allies and partners, and with NATO itself as an alliance, and more on the strategic level on doing some engagement and aligning Canadian responses with that of NATO, and as well as working within other government departments within Canada in that NATO context. So as part of that, I work closely with the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Talon, and I'm the Canadian Armed Forces Cyber Command lead for a couple of the NATO exercises that we're involved in.
That's great. And you were involved in the exercises, I mean, since, last year, right? That was the first time that Canadian Armed Forces participated, or did we participate before that as
We've
well?
participated in those in the past. Uh, I think last year we had more specialized involvement on the technical side for Cyber Coalition,
Mhm.
and also with Lock Shields, we had more of a involved role partnering with South Korea for that exercise.
Okay. So before we get into the individual exercises, maybe you can help set the stage for us to understand, what is the importance of exercises like this across allies?
hmm Well, as part of NATO, it's an alliance built on mutual defense, and so part of that is the cohesion of the alliance is important. And one of the key aspects of that cohesion is the trust that you can build and the interoperability with the allies within that alliance. So these exercises they um, help develop that relationship with other nations, help to build that trust, so that when it comes time for real world scenarios, we are used to working with each other. We can communicate with each other, share the information, because we've already done it in an exercise setting. And it allows us a little bit of freedom to try new things, maybe make mistakes and learn from them so we can get better at doing it in the real world.
And then in the real world, outside of these exercises, how much cooperation is there that happens on a day-to-day basis?
Every day there's
Yeah.
cooperation that happens. It happens on many levels. One is on basic information sharing with our allies, which happens on a daily basis. Uh, when needed, if there's an incident with an ally, there may be some outreach within the alliance to help out each other out. That happens periodically when it's needed. And then also looking amongst allies more at the political level on what kind of collective responses we can take, uh, uh, getting out messages together in an alliance and not just one nation speaking out. So those happen periodically as well. But there's also the working together on specific operations that we have with some of the key allies. For example, we work with, as part of the Army and our brigade headquarters in Latvia, we have a large presence in Latvia from the military perspective. That bleeds into our cyber defense role as well. So we have a lot of engagement with Latvia and other key allies in that context.
Okay. And then, so what do the exercises allow people to do or allow you to do that you can't do kind of in the real world scenarios? And it seems obvious. And I come from a world of tabletop exercises
Mhm.
and capture the flag type exercises. But, if you were to like scaling this kind of globally and scaling this with respect to military operations, help us get a sense of what that means.
Well, the exercises allow you to sort of have that engagement prior to an actual incident happening. So that when you do have to respond to something together, you've already established those ties. You already know who to talk to. You already have established a working relationship. So the exercises allow you to sort of make those connections and build that trust, because that's one of the key aspects in the cyber domain is working with allies to build the trust, because it's often sensitive national networks that they're dealing with. And being able to work together and build that trust between the two happens a lot on the exercise side, or happens first maybe on the exercise side of things. That then allows you to build more engagement with those allies in order to prepare for the real world.
Okay. How would you compare kind of the trust building compared with technical skills in terms of you're looking at the skills and what's important and
Mhm.
valuable?
The technical skill, I would say the trust building is like an enabler for the technical skills. So you can have very good capability in any kind of technical scenario to deal with a problem. But being able to have that trust with other nations helps you to work together with it. I'll use the hockey analogy.
Mhm.
You can have all stars on the ice, but if they don't pass the puck to each other, you're never going to win the game. So, in order to pass the puck, you have to be able to trust the other player, and that's kind of the analogy we can use in cyber as well. In order to be able to leverage other nations' capabilities to be able to offer your own capabilities, you have to have that trust, and uh, and that just enhances the technical skills that you already have and the technical skills that your allies have. That trust makes them work together.
Hmm. How do you get started, building that trust, and across, when you know you're going to work with a partner, a specific partner in an exercise? Is there a methodology that you use or an approach, or is it just like, hey, how's it going? I'm Gary kind of thing?
There's a couple of ways I think, and many people may have their own approaches to it.
Mhm.
I think what I've seen in our engagement is face to face is a big way to build that trust.
Okay.
So if you're conducting an exercise together, or if you're doing an operation together, doing some of those initial visits to really understand the other team that you're working with is vital. And whether you do that as part of the exercise as a joint team, or whether you're working more remotely, um, but have to work together, having that sort of connection is important, because you have to be able to communicate together in a comfortable atmosphere to be able to work together.
I just really want to get a sense of that. So, like, without naming names, can you think of a time when, trust actually was built up much faster than you thought it would be, or a little bit slower than you thought it would be, and you had to kind of overcome that?
Um, and you're going to trip me off. There's always been, I think, in our experience, that the trust has been built up fairly well, fairly quickly, because we've worked with allies, whether it's been in the cyber context or not. We've been working with allies quite closely for a number of years. So I think our approach to it is fairly well oiled. Um, if you're looking at, and I think the overall context with cyber defense amongst the globe, because it is a global issue that we're dealing with. I think a lot of nations, whether or not you're working with Europeans or people from East Asia, or Indo-Pacific region or South America, they all have the same issues that they're working with, and so that helps to sort of bridge that divide. You're not coming at with it from a perspective of you're working with a different culture or different people. You may have a different approach to things, but you all have the same problem that you're trying to solve. And I find that has created a lot of common understandings, or facilitated a lot of the common understandings that we have with our allies and partners. And so I think, in answer to your question, the team building aspect has been fairly successful from what I've seen in it. Um, I don't. I think any differences um, that you might think of encountering when you're working with different cultures, for example, in my perspective, have been kind of trivial, because everyone is approaching it with a very serious and professional attitude, knowing the risks and the threats that are out there, and a desire to work together.
Yeah, that must help a lot when you have that same understanding of what you're up against,
hmm
kind of thing, as well. Okay, thank you for that. And then, do you have any sense of whether or not the trust and decision-making frameworks are have anything that is unique to the cyber domain, and when you look at all the other domains?
Um, my impression from what I've seen in the cyber domain is that it's a little bit of a broader approach, in terms of, in the case of Canada, sort of the whole of government working together. Um, in other domains, if you're doing an operation, uh, the operations are localized geographically. There may be some divide between sort of the military force and the civilian population back home, or or the support they receive. But in the cyber domain, uh, the geographic isolation that Canada sometimes has is almost meaningless. So the reliance that we have on things like civilian infrastructure, and the need for political approaches to evolving sort of trends in the globe with respect to cyber activities and incidents. Um, that has been, in my perspective, it's been different than the traditional domains.
Mhm.
So as if there's that blurring, not a blurring of lines, but there's the increased cooperation that we need to have with both our civilian counterparts and with industry. And the responses often span all of that, whether it's from technical, political, sorry, technical, operational, or political. Often the solution is a combination of all three of those.
I think that's really interesting, and why it's important to sort of look at this from that cyber perspective, and to have that in mind when you're designing things, and
Mhm,
not to necessarily adopt things that other domains might have, in the same way.
mhm,
Okay, really interesting. So let's turn to locked shields
mhm.
for a bit, and really love to get a sense of that. I think something that I saw online was that it brings together 8,000 attacks, kind of thing, across multiple systems, 5G, air defense systems, power grids, all of those things, which we know is very real
Mhm.
for many countries today, and strategic communications and legal and all of that as well. I love the how holistic it is. So maybe paint us a picture of what it looks like to be inside of that environment,
Yeah,
all that happening.
Exercise Lock Shields is run by the Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence out of Tallinn, Estonia. It's the CCDCOE is a NATO accredited center of excellence, so it's not a part of the NATO command structure itself. It's accredited by NATO, which means it's very open for allies and partner nations to be part of the exercise. I think last year, I think overall across the globe, there was something like 4,000 participants in 41 countries. So NATO allies plus partners. It's a points based game, so you could say it's a competition based game. Although they do reward some cooperation as well, but yeah, it's fair to say it's a competition based game, uh, based on uh, the teams, or the blue teams that are participating, are partnered up. So it's not just one single nation forming a team. It's two or more nations forming one team that helps to defend helps defend the networks of a fictional island nation that's involved in some crisis, uh, defending there against incidents from a fictional adversary. So if you're part of that team, you're part of a team defending a sector of that nation, and like I said, against sort of incidents against civilian infrastructure, against military infrastructure, and so it's a broad range of technical skills, but it's across, like I said, civilian transportation, power distribution, logistical supply, military operations. So it's a broad sort of cyber defense exercise. So it is the focus of the exercise is largely technical, but as you alluded to, there's much more than just the technical play to it, because um, the incidents that happen don't just have a technical impact; they have a impact on the society of that fictional nation. They have an impact on the overall uh, partners that may be helping that nation with their situation. So uh, that's sort of the context. And you start off with some crises happening, and the crises just build over time.
Mhm.
It's focused on, like I said, focused on that crisis response and rapid decision making over the course of the exercise.
So time is quite an important factor here. How do they sort of give you that sense of time and urgency? Is there like a giant clock ticking away? Is there, are like people dying in the game kind of thing?
Well,
Like
they
what?
they
How
have
do they do it?
they have various methods to kind of show where the various teams are at, like a dashboard that whether lights are on or off. Um, will depict whether or not a system is down or up, so you can sort of visually track the progress of all the teams that way. Of course, everyone has visibility on that, so there's that desire to get your team back up and operational. Um, some of the injects more at the strategic level, where you're practicing your sort of public affairs communication responses, or your strategic responses to an incident, have a bit of a clock on them. So you have
As they do in real life.
as they do in real life.
So
So
neat.
you have a certain level amount of time to answer them, and if you don't answer them within that time, then you don't get any points. So it's a bit of
Oh,
artificially built into it.
okay.
That time pressure is artificially built in to sort of reflect sort of that real world crisis that we feel.
And so just to understand that interplay, so is it up to the technical teams to flag like when the legal and strategic, decisions need to be made, for instance, or is there constant sort of everyone's kind of everything at the same time? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a lot of working together. So every team will have a technical component um, with a sort of a reporting component, which helps to understand the technical impact
Mm.
of the incidents that are happening. And then there will be a legal team or a policy team or a global affairs team that are there to sort of assess, based on the technical impact, what actions should be taken. So the technical team tries to solve the problem on their level,
Mm.
but then there's also the simulated real world impacts of that the other members of the team are trying to solve, find mitigations, communicate to national audiences the situation, and otherwise try and remedy the situation, or like I said, explain to their local population what's happening.
Mm. And is there a right and wrong answer? So if I was part of the legal team and maybe I did something illegal or advised something illegal by accident because, maybe the regulations have changed since I last looked at them, for example, how is that scored? Is it just on having a response of some kind, or did they look at the quality of the response?
They're very careful not looking at sort of, because every nation and therefore every team will have its own legal answer to certain things.
Mhm.
So the right legal answer from country A may be a different legal answer than country B would have, or their approach. So the scoring tries not to quantify one nation's or one approach over another approach, but it's how the teams arrive at that decision. Is it a comprehensive decision? Does it cover all the points? Rather than, is it a right or wrong answer? It's more about, does it address the situation? Does it how do you arrive at the answer? How all encompassing is it?
And are there, judges or arbitrators who kind of walk around or are present that you can refer to during the exercise?
There is, yeah. There's an assessments team that helps to score this exercise.
Yeah.
There's a method of debating, not debating. There's a method of what's the word I'm looking for? Challenging
Oh, yeah.
decisions, and so yeah, so they have that all worked out.
So I'd like to understand a little bit more about how the points are awarded and
Mm.
whether or not that can ever work in, ways that weren't anticipated.
Sure. I think there's one example where, if you're a team and you're trying to harden your network and make it secure, there's a lot of things you can do to make it so secure that no attacker could get in and compromise that system. But unfortunately, then your users can't use it either. So you can make um, your encryption or your password so strong, whatever, that renders it unusable.
Mhm.
And so and that's happened before, where a team has very proudly made their network so secure that the user simulation team that's part of the exercise, can't log into the system or can't do it in a timely fashion. It just takes so long to log in. So those will be logged as sort of tickets, help
Okay.
tickets.
Okay.
And if they come up and the scoring team notices that team can be penalized for putting in such a strong encryption that the users can't use it. And that reflects real life too.
It
I
does.
mean, you have to be able to be secure, but you have to have as a trade off on usability as well. You have to
Mhm.
be able to have it where your user can actually log in fairly simply and use the system.
Oh, I've heard those complaints. Amazing. So points can be deducted as well.
Yes. Yeah, there can be penalty points given.
Oh, what's another scenario that might have penalty points that you've seen? Anything else?
Um,
I think we can learn a lot from like penalties and penalty points, like honestly.
well, not so much penalties, but I think ano- before when I mentioned that they're now starting to award points for collaboration. So
Mhm.
um, Lock Shields, for example, has started off as a competition based, and it still kind of is a competition based exercise. But they are trying to put the scoring system to reflect more of a cooperative nature on it. So it's a fine balance, and it's a tricky problem, I think, to get to. So if you are if you don't collaborate with a team or you keep things to yourself, maybe that could have an impact on the points you have. You certainly can get points awarded if you share some information, even if that helps the team maybe get ahead. You get a little bit of points to help that out.
That's all right. So you can be penalized, you can be awarded points. And so, like, what does the like kind of the ideal kind of flow look like? I guess if a team was to get like maximum points, like on everything, can you give me a sense of what that might look like?
So it would incorporate a lot of factors. So the exercise scoring is designed to reflect not only the technical skills but the non-technical skills. So if you want that perfect score,
Mhm.
I mean, not only would you have to sort of solve a particular technical problem and get your system back up and running, but your reporting of that incident, your information sharing would have to be done in a timely manner. Um, your the answers that you give to whether it's a legal challenge would have to be again an all-encompassing. You know other countries will handle the legal challenge differently based on their own national
Mhm.
legal systems, but the scoring is designed to sort of take away some of that you know uh, quantitative measure against what national policies are, and make it look at the answer as a whole. Is it a comprehensive answer? Does it take into account all of the factors? So your perfect score would be very hard to achieve because you have to be perfect on so many things,
Mm.
not just technical, but non-technical, legal, policy, communications, and the technical.
Mhm. Mhm. Which is also a good kind of real world parallel, I think. You can't engineer your response to expect to be perfect because people, I mean, it's challenging, like when you're responding to incidents.
Mhm.
And, I don't know if there's any such thing as perfection, really. But there are certainly things that you can strive for, and behaviors that you want to reward, and recognize and acknowledge.
And I think for lock shields, we would say it's competition based, but the points they're increasingly looking at the point system not so much as winning or losing, but where can you improve? Like it's a
Mhm.
quantitative measure of what are the areas you can improve on. So it's almost like a perfect score, maybe impossible to achieve, but that's okay
Yeah.
because the score is where not so perfect are just identifying areas that you can improve on. So that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Is there any particular prize that the winners get?
Bragging rights.
Fair enough. Is there like a trophy, bragging rights? Okay, yeah, it's good.
Mhm.
It's good. I'd take that.
Yeah, and they've started to get away too from sort of uh, again. I know they're the emphasis is on cooperation, and they're still sort of keeping that scoring in there again to identify areas to improve.
Yeah.
So I think it's gone from sort of the traditional um, win, lose, capture the flag, highest points the winner, to here are the nations that did better than, or the top nations that did better than others.
Mhm.
And you all have your scores, you know where to improve. So the philosophy of the exercise is changing. I think it's changing for the better. And they're using that point system more less as a win and lose, more on identifying where you can improve, which again is why we do these exercises.
It sounds very thoughtful and, like, very
Mhm.
thoughtfully, put
There's a
together.
lot of thought put into the scoring, and Canada's been having a bit of a leadership role in there. Our person embedded in the Center of Excellence is one of the leaders in helping to design the scoring system.
Oh, very fun. I can imagine a lot of people who would wanna help with that. That's very
Well, it's a lot of work. I'm not sure if they would or not.
sounds so cool, though. That's great. Really good to understand. Are is any of the scoring, kind of the achievements, is any of that disclosed publicly?
They used to announce like the top winners, but I think now they announce, if I recall correctly, I think they announce that like the top three, but they don't necessarily advertise which team got the top score.
Neat. Could you take us through like a particular play or attack that you remember?
Um,
Or situation?
I think I can't. I'll use sort of a hypothetical
Sure.
one, that because I can't think of a scenario specifically offhand, but a
Mhm.
hypothetical one might be where a power plant is affected by a cyber incident. So in this scenario, that power plant is powering a city that its citizens rely on. So there is a time pressure to try and resolve that conflict to get the power back on, so the citizens of the country can carry on with their business and the economy, et cetera. But that also might have an impact on, say, a rail transportation node or an airport, which is also being used to maybe facilitate humanitarian operations somewhere else on the island, or to uh, transport military operations to help secure yet another part of the island. So the impacts aren't just on the civilian population, but also on the function of the nation in other areas, not just on support to the citizens, but also on the operations that they need to carry out in support of their own defense. So that's where, again, some of the uh, more of the communications experts come in about how to communicate the problem not only to citizens, but then to help frame what the problem is, to communicate the impact broadly to its citizens and not just that their power's out. Um, and then it's what actions can you take to fix that problem. That's where you engage the legal analysis and the policy analysis to determine whether or not is what you're doing, can we do it legally, and is it in alignment with our national policies that we have. And then once a decision is taken, it's again back to the communications. How do we communicate that decision to citizens? How do we communicate that decision to our allies? And how do we implement it?
Wow. And so there's an element of looking at how to respond, for sure, and then the resilience that is there will impact that as well.
Yes.
And so we go as far as understanding kind of what remediation has to take place and what national coordination has to occur as well, and then hand it off. Is that
Yeah, so
that's
it's so part of it is information sharing, and that's part of the exercise too. Is there's a bit of a reward for information sharing. It's a
oh, okay.
competitive exercise,
Huh,
but you can also get points in helping another team.
nice.
So it does highlight the fact that cooperation is essential in this. So it's that information sharing piece. So that's one. Second part is, okay, how can we then mitigate, or how can we solve the problem or fix it? Do we Um, Fixing is one thing, but also while we're fixing it, are there other measures we need to take to sort of get around the problem, whether or not it's switching from rail networks to road networks, for example.
Hmm.
Um, and then once you've decided on a way to implement it, if it's something that you need to then use to advertise that you've taken action, you fixed the problem, there's some messaging you want to get out to demonstrate that you're resilient, that you fix the problem and operations are back to normal. How can you best do that?
Wow. It's a lot of communication,
Yes.
which is again like real life.
Yeah.
You would need that as well. Super interesting. Is there anything that tends to surprise first-time participants in this kind of a scenario?
I think for Lock Shield specifically, I think it's the scale of the exercise. Um, um, a lot of the nations take it very seriously, putting in large teams, and I think if you're to get yourself involved in Lock Shields at the start, you may be surprised at the size of team that's involved. Some of them can be in 60, 80 people. Some
Wow.
teams are over 200.
Wow. That's just fun to think about, even.
And they get that way because some of the nations are able to leverage their industry, their academic, like universities. Um, in some cases, their cyber reserve force are involved. So every nation sort of involves their own or decides what their own trading audience will be. And it's up to each nation to sort of decide what level of participation they're going to do. And like I said, some get as high as like 200 people participating in this from various sectors within their own nation.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so there's no limit on like the number of people you can have involved.
Well, there are some practical limits, I
Right.
suppose.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's in terms of how big is too big. I think that's a question they're still trying to
Neat.
come to grips with. But
I mean, ideally, I guess you'd have like really effective mass coordination.
well,
Some
the bigger you are, the harder it is to work together,
true,
and harder it is to coordinate things, especially in a crisis situation.
true.
So I think that's the trade-off that you would have is when you have a larger team is the greater preparations that go into it, and the greater the challenges to coordinate between them.
I guess I was thinking that it would imply that there's a level of awareness within a nation and all the partners within
Mhm.
a nation that would be, a good foundation
Mhm.
for other things to come, kind of thing. But I completely understand that trade-off would be hard to coordinate as well. Have you seen benefits to coordinating with industry and academia, for instance, within those teams?
Well, I think in the cyber domain in particular, I think the cooperation with, like, again, I'm come from the military, so I think looking at the cooperation between military, civilian, and industry and academia, I think all of that is key, not just to national resilience, but also to cooperating with our allies. Um, and I think it's just that again, that's the difference I think between other domains is that the that cooperation with someone like industry or sectors like industry are more important now than they ever have been.
Mhm. Great. What are some of the takeaways, I guess, that teams have after working, internationally with other teams like this?
A lot of them it has to do with a lot of the comments that I've seen are lesser lessons learned on how the teams can practically work together over the divides. Sometimes the teams are separated geographically. Some teams will try and work virtually together. Some teams will have one central location where they come together and work. It's challenging over time zones. It's challenging when there's language barriers between the teams. But they come up with solutions, and I think that's part of why we do these exercises. Is uh, you test these capabilities, you find out what sort of your pain points are, and then you next time you can take steps to address them and make it easier. The use of like AI for language translation might be a good way to address that. Um, and whether or not you are participating within a nation, whether or not you're working together in the same location or whether you're able to work from your own national locations but collaborate online, is something that nations will try and solve, which is the best approach. So I think it's the practical ways of collaborating and cooperating with another nation are the biggest lessons learned that people take away from these exercises.
And what does it look like, when you have insights or things that you've learned, like from these exercises, to turn that into, something that's actionable afterwards, or something that becomes a part of your training, for instance? What does that process look like?
Well, generally, and for lock shields as well as other exercises, you go through a bit of a lessons learned process.
Mhm.
So you take some time after the exercise, and it's usually one of the hardest things to do because you're usually just done with the exercise. One of the hardest things
Very
is to
human.
sit down and sort of look at what you did and
Mhm.
how what things are you doing that you should continue to do because they were successful, and what areas do you need to work on for the next time, and not only just to make a better exercise, but how to improve your operations, how to
Absolutely.
improve your real life operations. And so exercises in general, especially if you're a NATO ally, we're all used to that kind of situation where we examine, go through a lessons identified, lessons learned process, and then we can incorporate them the next time to
Mhm.
try and improve how we've done things in the past.
Good. Great. Any challenges with that? Is there ever like more than you can absorb?
Uh, the challenge is really focusing on identifying them, but also then getting from sort of that identified and the observations you make to then incorporate those observations into a new procedure or a new way of doing things. Um, and that itself is a challenging exercise to go through. Um, but it's something that we sort of have to do, and that's one of the benefits of doing it in an exercise scenario. We also do it in operations as well, so it's not something that's just solely on exercises. But when it comes to exercises, it does allow you a little bit more sort of freedom to try new things, where you might not want to try something new and test it in the real world. An exercise environment lets you do that, and take away some lessons that you wouldn't normally have tried in the real world.
Is that part of the preparation going into, like, a locked shields, thinking about new things that you might wanna try? And just tell us a little bit about that preparation that takes place.
A lot of exercises start off sort of the same way. Is that you look at what the aim of the exercises is and how can you work to achieve them. So whether it's lock shields or something like Cyber Coalition, we try and identify what is it that we can achieve from participating in that exercise. How can we contribute to the exercise, but what can we also achieve? What new technology or what new process can we test out? With the lock shield scenario, we have in the past concentrated most of our play sort of at the strategic level, so involving other government departments. And that's really helped sort of facilitate how we communicate together and broaden the understanding of the the cyber domain, not just in the military, but also with our government departments in like public safety and Transport Canada, um, to help understand sort of the cyber domain context in a NATO context, and develop sort of a common language, common understanding of each other's capabilities and what each other's responsibilities are. So when we approach it next year, uh, or we approach a new exercise, the idea is to look at what is that exercise aim, what are sort of the themes that exercise is doing, and how can we uh, take that theme and what can we learn from it? What can we script as a uh, specific Canadian scenario that we'll have a takeaway learning from?
Nice, and so you're working with other government departments as well to
Yes.
to build that awareness and to get any inputs from them that they
Yes.
might have as well. Oh, that's great. Good. Amazing. So let's look at Cyber Coalition now and help us understand, like, what the difference is between the 2.
So whereas Lock Shields was sort of a competitive based exercise in a crisis mode, protecting a nation's networks,
Mhm.
fictional island nations networks, Cyber Coalition is more of a procedures cooperation based exercise. It is run by NATO itself rather than the Center of Excellence.
Mhm.
So it's focused more on the military context, although like all things cyber, there's more than just a military context on it, but the scenario is focused on a fictional NATO operation in a peacetime scenario where the allies are working to achieve a common goal and have to face numerous cyber incidents that then impact that mission.
Hmm. What would be, like, an example of that kind of a mission?
So again, it stretches. broadly.
Mhm.
The incidents that would occur in this exercise can vary between incidents that affect NATO's own networks in the mission area. It could be an incident that impacts a nation's home networks that then impact not only sort of its citizens, but also how we can force project um, military forces from that nation into the operational theater. Also, some of the new areas, whether it's space or electric vehicles, like there's a number of things that don't necessarily have a military context, but can have a military impact if they happen on a national network.
Hmm. Do the lessons learned feel any different, or does the trust and cooperation feel any different?
The difference is more because the exercise with Cyber Coalition takes place in the context of a NATO military operation. So a lot of the lessons learned that we go through look at how to improve sort of the collaboration amongst the allies
Mhm.
in that sense. So the, the exercises are similar to a certain degree in the types of impacts that they might have, but the lessons that we take from Cyber Coalition are not just technical, but they are looking sort of at the operational and the practical ways that nations share information, uh, share and collaborate on incident management and mitigation, and the impact that the alliance can take to resolve those.
Okay, and is that all part of what you think of as interoperability in this context?
Yeah, interoperability not only looks at how our networks can work together with other nations within the alliance, but also how we can communicate. Whether again it's information sharing, whether it's coordinating a response, that's part of the interoperability thing as well.
And who owns like any, any improvements or changes to that in order to improve the interoperability? Is it, you and a partner nation, like Canada and a partner nation, for example, that would identify, a benefit to improving a particular process or a way of communicating, and then they would kind of take that away? Or is that like a larger group kind of discussion?
It can be both. In the grand scheme of things, it's really a NATO exercise. So it's NATO's sort of ownership of looking at the processes that NATO has amongst the allies. So when I say it's a NATO issue, it's the alliance issue. So, but it is sort of based on that. So the NATO leadership does take a look at the lessons learned and how can it improve its own procedures so that allies can cooperate better amongst themselves. But it also is up to nations what they how they want to deal with it. For example, last year
Mhm.
we took the opportunity with Cyber Coalition to have a specific collaboration with France in some cyber defense technology. And so not only we're working with NATO as an alliance and helping us to understand and work through the procedures, helping NATO to improve procedures, but also specifically binationally with France to work on some of those technical information exchange.
Oh, interesting. So you have the latitude to make that decision,
Yeah,
essentially. Nice. And how did that work out?
worked out well, and I think these opportunities are something uh, that nations can avail themselves on to do so in the future because it's not just again if it's not just a NATO exercise, but you can use that to leverage partnerships with other countries as well.
Hmm. Nice. Is that commonly done now? Or is that something that's just kind of
I think it's growing.
like
I think I think I mean it's happened in the past, but I think from what I've seen, it's happening in a few more instances than it's happened in the past.
okay. Things are changing all the time. But, to date, what have you observed is like kind of the hardest part of dealing with an attack in this context?
There's a couple of challenges. I think one of the main challenges, again, it depends on the context. I think for a military operation, again, we're come from CAF Cyber Command, so it's sort of the lens I look through it. It's I think it's important to understand when there is an incident, what is the impact of that incident, and understanding how then you can cooperate with other nations um, to deal with that. And so you may have a lot of technical capability to deal with that, but it's understanding what the impact of it is and be able to communicate that and come work together with other nations, but also with other partners within your government to help solve that. And I think that's a challenge that these exercises help to develop the workarounds for.
Mm. That's a challenge in other spaces as well, just understanding that impact and agreeing on what it is. That's interesting. Are there things that you've seen that are helpful with that challenge?
Well, I think, you know, again, like the point of these exercises is working together before real incidents happen. So being able to know the people that you're working with, getting back to that trust issue, if you're able to pick up the phone and contact someone in the real world with someone you've already have an established relationship with in terms of working with them in it, whether it's been an exercise or a prior incident, you're able to sort of address the situation much faster if you're able to have sort of that common understanding and that trust with that individual or with that team or with that nation. So I think we've been fairly successful in doing those, whether it's been exercises or other engagements that we have with NATO allies and partners. Having that to build the trust, I think, has led to the success that we've had.
Okay. In a kinetic domain, the cohesion that you have tends to be, easier to see. It tends to be kind of more tangible. Here we're talking about a lot of relationships and trust building, and maybe it's like a phone call. You're able to, call someone, someone's online. Like that's about as tangible as it can get sometimes, right? I guess how do exercises like this make that more real, and how do you capture that? Like, do you have like a CRM where you like list you've got trusted relationships with like, these particular teams and people, for instance, as a result of these exercises? Just wondering how you make it more tangible and practical so that you can leverage it later on. Or is it all just kind of in people's minds, which is, okay too?
Um, I think like you're saying the kinetic areas. I think that human contact is as important in cyber as it is in the kinetic realm. So um, as I mentioned, sort of sometimes you have to get out and meet people and develop that. It's picking up a phone is rarely the best first contact. You should have someone. Obviously, that's the way to get introduced, but you're not going to work together in the most effective way unless you've actually spent some time face to face together. So, in terms like, do I keep my Rolodex? Using the old 20th century term, they have sort of the 21st century equivalent of that. Yeah, we've all. I think we all have our own methods for keeping contacts. I've seen it where we have sort of a central database to put contacts in there, but there's been more than a few instances where um, relationships I've developed and contacts that I've made throughout these exercises have been useful when we decide, oh, we need to, we should work more closely with this nation. Um, who should we contact? What's the best way to get in touch with them? Well, we have that information there, and how it's done is kind of less relevant. The fact that it's there and how we can reach it is important. Having a good disciplined way of having those records is a good method of doing it. But yes, a CRM or something, you know, the old good old Rolodex.
Right.
Those are good methods.
Right.
But yeah, I think keeping those contacts are important, and especially if you are in a situation like the military, where or even in politics where you may rotate people through.
Hmm.
It's good to keep those up because um, people will leave the job and a new person will come in.
That's right.
So you have to sort of maintain that contact, maintain that relationship, just to keep that contact alive, even if it's a different person.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to stay in touch with all around the world, I imagine. Okay, and then how do cultural and organizational differences show up in these exercises?
Yeah, my experience hasn't been a big factor. I don't
Mhm.
think. I think I come back to that the comment I made earlier, where whether or not like I worked with people from Europe, I worked with people from South Korea, from South America, um, and again, we're all approaching it from some of the same. We all have the same problem set or similar problem set, so we all have the same sort of desire to work together. So that, in my view, overcomes some of the cultural differences. And yeah, maybe there's some funny anecdotes that you may have where there's some cultural things. Like, for example, I remember in Lock Shields where someone decided they should, back when the teams were based on single nation teams rather than paired up, someone had tried to correlate nation scores with the latitude of their capital
Oh.
because the Nordic countries are very proud of their capabilities in this area and wanted to sort of show there was a correlation there. So that was kind of amusing, but it was, wasn't a real barrier to anything. It was just sort of an amusing thing.
Mhm.
And then, um, another example might be when during, cultures may have some cultures may be more sort of stoic or socially distant and have their own personal space more so than others. So during COVID, when we're instructed to keep 2 meters away from each other, the old joke is great. We have to stand closer now.
Mhm.
So, um, and I think other cultures may place more importance on developing a relationship before business is conducted. I think the business world has known this for quite some time. So again, I haven't seen those as sort of insurmountable problems. I think because we come from it from a common understanding of what the problem is, we're all approaching it almost from a common NATO perspective, even though it's partner nations and not just allies. But both the exercises that I've been involved in, they're sort of a NATO centric exercise. So that's sort of a common culture in a way there. So
Mhm.
again, I think individual cultural differences between the participants hasn't been insurmountable issues as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm. It's probably like so that NATO culture and then probably a common kind of cyber culture that,
Yeah.
everyone is kind of part of as well.
Well,
Hopefully
so
helps.
there's a lot more common than differences,
Yeah,
right? So, like you mentioned, it's a common. So, there's a bit of a NATO culture. There's a bit of a cyber culture.
right,
There's a military culture that
right.
helps people work together very quickly as well. So, I think overall we have a lot more in common than there is apart.
It's probably, and I'm just guessing here, it's probably more difficult to work with people who have a less of an understanding of cyber, for instance, who aren't familiar with cyber culture or who don't understand the risks as well, who are maybe aren't as literate, cyber literate, for instance. That's probably a bit more of a barrier in some ways.
Yeah, and that's what I found out with these exercises too. And just like myself, I don't have the technical background and the environment that we work in because this is not just a technical issue.
Mhm.
There are operational and political issues and cross-governmental issues. So it's not, technical people aren't the whole solution. There's a lot of capabilities that are involved. And so the people I encounter through my work, um, only some of them have a technical background. Others have maybe an exercise background. Others have military operations background. Others may have just more of a communications background. But yeah, obviously, like that common understanding, you have to approach it with some sort of common understanding of the cyber domain, and I think that is pretty vital to do. You have to come with some understanding of that, and getting back to that, working with people, and that's the kind of common culture we all try and develop is that understanding of the domain.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of different roles, and I'm learning about different roles in cyber all the time. Even from as someone who's in industry,
Hmm.
and you're going to have firewall technicians and cyber threat intelligence folks and just all kinds of people. Would you say that the definition of a cyber defender has expanded over the last while, or perhaps continues to expand?
Yeah, it's I think it's pretty diverse too because it depends on the area you're working in. And again, I take that even though I come from a military background, cyber isn't just the military context. There's so
Mhm.
many, like I said, with industry. So there are some skills that military cyber defenders may rely on more, whether it's malware analysis or forensics, whereas someone in the industry may rely on different skills. And so um, I think that's the challenge. Definition of a cyber defender is pretty broad, and I think there's certain specialties that are involved in that and certain skill sets. So, um, how to capitalize on all of those to kind of come up with again to build your national resilience. is the challenge. And I think it's exercises like Lock Shields that help to bridge those gaps where different capabilities can come to play.
Mhm. Mhm. It's fun stuff. So, for civilian leaders in areas of infrastructure like healthcare, government, finance, what do you hope that, they might take away from the idea that we're doing these exercises, that, we're participating in what are we rehearsing, on their behalf kind of thing? What would you want them to understand?
Well, we're come from the perspective of the military as well, and we do not, national defense does not have a mandate to protect the Canadian civilian infrastructure. These are mandates within sort of public safety and within the um, Canadian Center for Cybersecurity,
Mhm.
Triple CS.
Mhm.
So that's their mandate, and I know that they work very well with industry and critical infrastructure and partners to help make sure that our national systems are resilient.
Mhm.
So they're doing great work there, and I think the lessons to learn is the importance of keeping up with that relationship with Triple CS, for example,
Mhm.
and having resilient systems, especially of industries that deal with critical infrastructure. Um, but also have the understanding too of how our national resiliency is important in terms of the alliance as well, and how we work together with NATO and partners and allies to sort of help ensure as a collective defense that we're a resilient alliance and not just a resilient nation.
Okay. Is there anything that, you would say to the general public, just to help them understand, something about these exercises and why they're important?
Well, I think overall, I think it's important to emphasize just how important it is for Canada as a nation, but also military and CAF Cyber Command it is to be involved in some of these NATO initiatives. We have a lot to contribute to NATO and the alliance, but we also get a lot back in terms of that, especially in the cyber domain, where our geographic position in the world is less important in cyberspace because of the we don't have the borders or we don't have the oceans that sort of protect us like the traditional domains do. We don't have that distance.
Mhm.
So the problem is global in nature. Canada has a lot to contribute. We are contributing. We're going to be contributing more, but also we're going to get a lot from that collective defense alliance that we have with our partners and allies.
What's something that gives you confidence in the alliance's ability to respond together, now and in the future?
I think it's on a number of different levels. So on the technical level, I know from the work I do, the work that NATO has taken to improve its information sharing in the cyber domain, the work that we're doing for exercises like Cyber Coalition to help facilitate the work that nations do together to help mitigate. So on the operations side, so flowing from sort of technical to operations, how we as uh, allies in an operation can work together better through practicing these procedures and refining how we work together, but also on the national level, the alliance level, the political level, where uh, nations will support each other in sort of responses and addressing challenges. And over the past number of years, you've seen sort of um, that cooperation at all those technical, operational, and political levels between the alliance. So that gives me hope because I know that makes us resilient or demonstrates our resilience as an alliance, which
Mhm.
again helps Canadians just as much as anyone.
It does, it does. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you something impossible. If you were to fast forward 5 years, what, are some of the capabilities or maybe mindset shifts that you hope that, we'll have achieved, through these exercises? And I know it's an ongoing kind of improvement process, and you're improving kind of all the time, but, given kind of the situations that we're looking at, into the future, what's something that, you anticipate that perhaps we will have built by that time or that you hope we will have built by that time?
Um, I think what we'll see in the next 5 years, and I'll look at it again for the CAF Cyber Command perspective, is that because we are a new command, we are growing. And so I hope to see through these exercises and through other relationships that we're building with allies, our own capabilities grow, just in terms of the scale at which we can work and the work that we're doing now to coordinate and cooperate with our partners will set us up well in the future for when we grow and uh, and are able to contribute more and again leverage more from what NATO has to offer.
Great. Good. What are you excited about, like, in terms of that growth? What do you think the opportunities will be for CAF Cyber Command?
Uh, I I think with anything in the military, it's about making that contribution and the leadership that Canada can show on the international stage. I get back to from the Army's perspective how we have Canada's leading with having as a framework nation having the brigade leadership, the brigade headquarters in Latvia with a multinational brigade, and so I think with CAF Cyber Command, it's sort of again demonstrating how much we can offer to the alliance and to show Canadian leadership within NATO, and also the benefits that we can get from that alliance.
Okay. Is there anything that you personally enjoy the most during these competitions?
Uh, I like um, I like seeing the cooperation that we have with our allies, and so for me, I think there's two levels of cooperation. I think it's not just the cooperation of the allies, but the sense of accomplishment you see from the Canadian team working together. Again, from our perspective, when we approach this exercise, we bring together a team from multiple departments within the federal government, and in some cases, provincial governments as well. And these are people who wouldn't normally work together day to day. But in this context, we're able to sort of sit around a table, whether it's virtually or in person, solve a problem, and work sort of across our different departments with our own sort of learning what each other's responsibilities are and approaches are and what their lanes are, and coming to solve that problem. So it's not it's people we don't work with every day, but we know that in a crisis we need to work with them. So I sort of see that sense of accomplishment by seeing that work out in an exercise environment, knowing that it helps us in the real world. And then sort of extrapolating that with the alliance as well. So not just within Canada, but also seeing how Canada works with other nations. Again, same idea. It's just helping us for the future when we need to work together in real life.
Yeah. Do you guys play any other games together? Like, as a team or, with, departments that, you're just meeting for the first time or just getting to know in terms of people? I'm thinking, like, online games.
No,
You guys gamers at all?
no. Maybe the technical guys do. I don't know.
Just curious. That's cool. Is there anything that, the
You're
leaders
really playing up the Dungeons and
I
Dragons
am, yeah,
fantasy.
kind of. Like, are you guys all doing that in the background is what I'm wondering.
I don't know. Not myself personally.
I have some players in the family and in my circle, a lot of folks who are playing online all the time, and my son included, who I think, actually learns quite a lot about, cooperation and frustration as well with, his teammates, right? So it's kind of interesting.
Well, I'm sure that is a degree of preparation for the real world.
It is, yeah. Is there anything that, CAF Cyber Command is setting in terms of a tone, um, as you continue to grow? Like, is there a particular, like, tone that you set or a culture that you try to set within the team?
Um, I think because the teams that I work with in the CAF Cyber Command, we tend to be again that sort of cross functional. Uh, Between public safety and triple CS and global affairs. So, uh, you know, our approach is to sort of have that collaborative environment with the other departments to try and solve a problem that's in the military context. I'm not sure if that's setting a culture or not or a tone for it, but I think that kind of approach is what will lead to success.
All right. Well, really appreciate having you here. I think that, there's lots of interest in the community here in Canada and in other nations as well. And community, industry, academia, all of those really leaning in and really appreciate, getting a sense of the story and how it feels to do these exercises and the enormous gains that can be had to help us with, military cooperation and just our cooperation, overall on the world stage. So, It's not getting any less important.
Mhm.
So, Gary, thanks so much for being here with us today. This is a lot that's evolving, and really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Wired for Change. I encourage you to follow and subscribe if you haven't already, because there are a lot of things to talk about and a lot that's changing, and let's meet it all together. Thank you and take care.